first of all, welcome to the Museum of Native American History. It has been a year since we have had people for a live event, and we can't thank you enough for being here today. Through that year that the Museum of Native American History was shut, we were reimagining how the museum will go forward virtually. So today we are filming. It is going out on Facebook, our Facebook Live. So all of you people out in virtual world, you know, this is a test. This is just a test, because we are planning on bringing back our 5th annual Native American Cultural Celebration, October the 7th, which will be hybrid. It is called Indigenuity, and we're starting a movement with Professor Dan Wildcat of the Haskell Indian Nation University. So it'll be Indigenuity, building a bridge to the future. And we will finally bring to the museum 2 amazing astronauts. So we're looking at how tradition meets adaptation and looking to our future. Whatever your gift is or your heart is in your profession, we hope that what you create for the earth will be good for all of our relations. I don't want to take up very much of your time, but it is such an honor for me to be here to introduce our good friend Gayle Ross. But if I could pick my neighbor ladies, she's my next door neighbor. Gayle not only is one of the most extraordinary storytellers that has told tales from the White House to around the world. She curates our Hear Our Voices, that she brings in different storytellers from nations all across the country. But after this is over with, kids of all ages, we do have a craft corner over there where you can make your own rattles or take a little cheat sheet home to make it yourself. And for that, again, with absolute gratitude to have you all at the museum, I'd like to introduce Ms. Gayle Ross.
And she is so right. We are so excited. The last time I was performing in front of an audience was March 13th of 2020. I was at a storytelling festival in Texas, and the city came in at noon, Friday the 13th, go figure, and shut us down. They said, you have until midnight. And so, although I have visited and told stories on Zoom, and I learned it can be a lot of fun, this is my first time back telling for a live audience, and I'm so thrilled that it's here at MONAH. As you heard, I am a storyteller, and I am Cherokee. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation, 2nd largest Indian tribe in the country, 2nd only to our Navajo brothers and sisters. I live about 17 miles north of our capital, which is Tahlequah, Oklahoma, just a little west of here. And I began telling stories because it was a hobby that got out of hand. From the time that I was very young, I just loved stories. And I learned that things that as I grew older, like if you know the best ghost stories, you get invited to the best story sleepovers. And then in 1979, with a dear friend of mine, we set off in a '59 Volkswagen van and made our way around the country telling stories. And we have sent, she's Appalachian Mountain storyteller, and of course I'm Cherokee, and so we both have deep ties to the Smoky Mountains, and she's still one of my dearest friends today. I want to start with the story. You guys come on in. We'll find some more chairs. Most of the stories that I heard from my grandmother were family history. My great-great-great-grandfather was John Ross. You may have heard of him. He was principal chief of the Cherokee Nation at the time that we were moved from our beautiful Smoky Mountain homeland. He led the people first in their fight to stay in their homeland, and then when President Andrew Jackson sent the cavalry in to round us up and start a forcible removal, Chief Ross capitulated. He went to the American government and he said, "We'll move. You let us move." He wanted to go as a people, as a government, as a tribal nation, not as some kind of defeated enemy. But even though we did oversee our own removal, it was very brutal. It was one of the worst winters of all time. And they say that maybe a quarter of our population did not survive. A little over 4,000 people died on the trail. And those were the kind of stories I heard growing up, along with some of the traditional rabbit stories, one of which I'll share for you guys in just a minute. But I want to start with the story that my grandmother did not tell me. It's one I wished she had told me. It would have made me feel better. It's about a bird with big feet. I have big feet. These are size 11s. I know I was a 10, but I grew a half a size each time I gave birth to a child. So I had only 2 kids. And I think maybe we all have something about the way we look that we think isn't quite right. And this is an old traditional Cherokee story about how that feels. Now, the bird's name is Meadowlark. And if you've ever seen Meadowlark, you know that he is quite handsome. Creator gave him a bright yellow vest, a little black and white necklace he wears around his throat. But Meadowlark couldn't see any of the things that made him handsome. All he could see was that Creator had given him enormous feet. And he was so embarrassed by the size of his feet, he would not come and fly with the other birds. He would not sit in the tree and sing with the other birds. He spent his time hiding in the tall grass, staring at his feet and feeling sorry for himself. Now, he was hiding in the grass one day when a grasshopper came along. Now, you know, the little bug people, they're never just hanging around and chilling. When you see little bug people, they're always going this way and that. They've got important work to do. And that's the way it was with that grasshopper. He was hopping along through the tall grass and boom, he bumped smack into Meadowlark. He picked himself up. He shook himself off. He said, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. I'm a bug. Bugs belong on the ground. Birds don't live on the ground. Birds live in the trees. You're not supposed to be on the ground. I'm supposed to be on the ground." Meadowlark waited till he stopped chattering and said, "I'm afraid to come out where the others will see me. They will laugh at my feet." Grasshopper said, your feet. What's wrong with your feet? I never saw a foot do anything funny before. What's the matter with your feet? I see your point. You're a bird, though. You don't fly with your feet. You fly with your wings. You're a bird. You don't sing with your feet. You sing with your voice. You're a bird. Act like one. And having delivered that little bit of wisdom, Grasshopper went about his day. And Meadowlark thought about what he had said. And after a while, he thought, you know, maybe he's right. Maybe I'm a little oversensitive about my feet. So he gathered all of his courage. He flew to the top of the tree. He threw back his head. And he started to sing. Teganoki chisqua, Teganoki chisqua, Teganoki chisqua, Jisqua thee. The bird is singing, the bird is singing, the bird is singing, little bird. Inspiring lyrics, aren't they? But you know, of all the gifts that Creator had given Meadowlark, the most beautiful one of all was his voice. So when he started singing, all the animal people gathered at the foot of the tree looking up at him. All the birds gathered in the treetop in a circle looking up at him. So when Meadowlark finished singing and opened his eyes and looked around, there everybody was, staring at him. And I think you can probably guess what he thought they were staring at. He flew back down into the tall grass, and nothing anyone could say would make him come out. Now, as wise as Grasshopper is, he was wrong about one thing. There are birds that live on the ground. One of them is the little Bobwhite, the little quail. And there was a little mother quail that year who accidentally built her nest in a field of wheat that the human beings had planted. When she built her nest, the wheat was no taller than the tall grass in the fields around it. But after she built her nest, after she laid her eggs, she watched, and the wheat just kept right on growing, taller and taller, until there was no mistaking what that was. And little Mother Quail, every day she sat on her eggs, hoping and praying that they would hatch before the human beings came to harvest the wheat. But one day, she heard the people talking about how everyone in the village would come to cut that wheat the very next day. And she knew that when the human beings, with their big feet, came walking through the wheat fields, someone would step on her nest. She would lose her babies. She started to cry and call for someone to help her. Goo-quay, 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 nani-way, 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 This is the little quail calling. And going about the world on very important business, Grasshopper heard Mother Quail. And when he got to her nest and found out what was wrong, he said, well, we'll just move your eggs. They're not safe in the wheat field. They'll be safe in the tall grass. We'll move your eggs from the wheat field to the tall grass. You can build new nests. They'll be safe in the tall grass. But, you know, neither Mother Quail nor Grasshopper was big enough to lift the eggs out of that nest. If you've ever seen the nest of a ground nesting bird, they build it very deep and they line it with feathers and pieces of fur until it's very, very soft. Mother Quail was just fixing to start crying again when Grasshopper said, wait a minute. I know who can help. And he went and got Meadowlark and brought him to that nest. And those big, ugly feet were just big enough to pick up Mother Quail's eggs. So 2 at a time, Meadowlark airlifted Mother Quail's eggs out of the wheat field to the field of tall grass, and she built a new nest there. And hiding the way he was, Meadowlark watched as she sat on those eggs, tending them so carefully. He watched when the day came that all those eggs hatched. And he watched when the day came that little Mother Quail, her head up, so proud and happy, she went off for a walk, and right behind her came that row of beautiful little baby birds. They looked like feathery little ping-pong balls rolling along behind her. And when Meadowlark saw that little family, he said, "These feet are ugly. I am so proud of them." And he flew back to the top of the tree. He threw his head back and he began to sing. And you know, meadowlarks have been singing ever since that time. Sometimes you'll be driving along a country road and you hear this beautiful silvery little peal, and you look up and it's meadowlark on one of the telephone wires. And if you listen carefully, you will notice that his song is even more beautiful than it was before. You see, he had learned something. And I hope it's what you all will remember whenever you think of this story. You have a voice. And your voice is an important part of who you are. And as you grow, your voice in your world will become more important than ever. It's not just how you talk, it's how you share yourself, how you help take care of other people in your family, in your neighborhood, in your community, in your country. So learn from Meadowlark. Make your song as happy as it can be, and never lend your voice to anything but the truth. Waldo, thank you. Do we have enough chairs? I'm so great. I love this. I cannot tell you. I mean, this is like, I want to crawl through this microphone and come out the speakers going, this is so cool. Charlotte asked me to tell a rabbit story, and since we have some kids here, I will do that. Rabbit is our, what the folklorists call our trickster hero. In that, there are all these stories about Rabbit. And they're teaching stories, especially for young people. I'm told in the old days, you didn't hit a kid. You didn't yell at a kid. When the kid did something that wasn't right, you told a story about what happened to Rabbit when he did that. I told my father one time, I said, see, it says right here in this book, you don't hit an Indian kid. Dad said, I never read that book. I know. But Rabbit is always in trouble. He's in trouble because he talks all the time. He doesn't care if he knows what he's talking about. He just likes the sound of his own voice. He talked so much, Unetlin, that creator, came along in the beginning days, scooped him up, said, gee, Stu, you don't listen. I'm going to help you listen better. Took a hold of Rabbit's ears. That's why Rabbit's ears stick up like that. But it didn't help. He still talked too much, and he loved to play tricks. Sometimes his tricks didn't work out so well. He ended up hurting only himself. Like the time he made Bear so mad. Bear reached out, grabbed that beautiful long bushy tail that Rabbit had, and broke it off. That's how come you don't see rabbits with long bushy tails. Just that little puff of white fur looks like scar tissue. But some of his tricks work out just the way he wants them to. And this is one of those. You see, in the beginning days of the world, all creatures spoke the same language. And the animals had a society that was organized very much like the People's Society. They had dances, they had stickball games, they had a tribal council, just like the people did. And in those days, there lived a bird called Buzzard. Anybody here know Buzzard? Have you seen Buzzard circling in the sky? Well, in the beginning days of the world, Buzzard was the one who came down from the world above and dried this soft, soft mud after it came up from the bottom of the ocean. He shaped the mountains. He dried the land so that everyone could come down and live in the Middle Earth. And after that time, he was very proud of himself. You know, like maybe somebody who was a high school football hero, and 30 years he's still talking about the fact that he was a high school football hero. That was Buzzard. And it didn't help that Buzzard was good looking. You see, when he was first made, he had beautiful, shiny black feathers and a white top knot that curled over the top of his head. Thousands of years before mousse, hairspray, or gel, Buzzard could make that top knot curl. And he was so vain about his good looks, he wouldn't help the other big birds with one of their most important jobs. The big birds, they eat dead, rotten animals. Yeah, I know, it's not the job I would have wanted. But that helps clean up the earth. Hawk, raven, crow, even eagle would eat a dead animal to help clean up the earth. But Buzzard would never help. Buzzard said things like, "Ew, it's all green and gushy. Ew, it's got little crawly things in it. Whew, smells bad. No, you eat it. It's not good enough for me." And the other animals decided that what he needed was an attitude adjustment. So they went to talk to Rabbit, because nobody can think up better tricks than Rabbit. And the funny thing is, this is the way Rabbit behaves himself all the time. But when he heard how Buzzard was acting, he said, "Oh, no. We'll teach him a lesson." And then Rabbit went to Buffalo. Now, I know that you probably associate buffalo with a tatonga, the plains bison, but there is still, actually in Canada, but there's a smaller cousin called the wood buffalo, and he lived in the Appalachian Mountains all the way from the Smokies to the Green Mountains of Vermont and on up into Canada. He was very important to the Cherokee people. So Rabbit went to Buffalo and told him exactly what he wanted him to do. And then he told the other big birds what Buffalo was doing. And what Buffalo was doing was climbing to the top of a mountain, to a clearing at the top of the mountain above the tree line where you can be seen from the air for many miles. He came stumbling out into that clearing, shaky on his legs, swaying back and forth, slobbering all over himself like he was sick. And when he reached the center of the clearing, he dropped to his knees, rolled over on his side, twitched a little, and held real still. And the other birds, they came spiraling down and landed in a circle around that buffalo. And Buzzard, he was just, coming lower and lower to see what was happening. And the other birds called up to him, "Buzzard, Buffalo is dead. You get down here. It'll take all of us. to eat up a buffalo. Well, Buzzard circled a time or two longer, and he noticed that buffalo looked pretty fresh. Didn't look like he'd been dead very long at all. Shoot, he probably still tasted good. So he landed next to the buffalo, and he told all the other birds, well, if I'm going to do this, I get to eat first. Now, this is an honor he was asking for. Whenever Indian people come together and it involves a meal, and pretty much whenever Indian people come together, it involves a meal. They backed away. They said, Buzzard, help yourself. Now, you might not have butchered a buffalo in the last week or two, so you might not know this. Buffalo, like all the deer, antelope, elk, has a strip of fat that runs down the back of his leg. It's very tasty. That's where Buzzard went first. And using that big, strong beak, he started ripping chunks out of the back of that buffalo's leg. Buffalo just held as still as he could, and he waited while Buzzard pecked higher and higher. And when that buffalo decided that Buzzard was in just the right place, he opened up his butt, leaped backward, and slammed it shut on Buzzard's head. And he got up and he began to run, dragging that poor Buzzard along behind him, bouncing in the dirt, over tree trunks and limbs. Look at him in the sky. He's all dusty and dirty. His wing feathers are all ragged. He was screaming for Buzzard to turn loose, but Buzzard just clamped down tighter and ran faster. After a while, Rabbit turned to the other birds and said, I bet he's learned his lesson. So when Buffalo ran by, Rabbit reached out, grabbed Buzzard's feet, and popped him loose. But Buffalo was holding on so tight that when Rabbit pulled Buzzard's feet, it took every white feather off Buzzard's head. You don't see a buzzard with the beautiful white top knot anymore. Just that ugly, red, naked head. And Buzzard did learn his lesson. Today, dead meat is all he eats. And he waits till it's rotten. He wants to make sure it's really dead. And that's why Buzzard has a bald head. These days, you can probably share that with your fourth grade teacher and not get in trouble. The 1950s were a different time. Shoot, I couldn't even talk about the Trail of Tears. My fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Roach, interesting name, she told our class that Andrew Jackson was a great president. I said, Andrew Jackson is and I used a hyphenated expression I had learned from my father. Got a quick trip to the principal's office. Now, even though my teacher had never heard of the Trail of Tears, and this was not uncommon in the 50s, my principal had. So he applauded my sentiment, if not my vocabulary. I want to share, do we have time? Oh yeah, we're doing good. I want to share one more story with you, maybe two, depending on how much time we have. This is a story that was given to me by someone very, very important to me. They say that the Cherokee people brought the sacred fire on the Trail of Tears. Sacred fire, actually, we believe the sacred fire came from the very first fire brought by the little water spider from an island where it burned in a hollow tree. And that fire was given to all of the people, and it burned especially bright in the townhomes of the 7 Cherokee peace towns. And it was tended at all time, never allowed to go out. And it traveled with us, they say, and burns now in the ceremonial grounds. There are 3 or 4 of them scattered throughout our reservation. And the people at the grounds, the medicine people, the wise ones, everyone has so much respect for them. No one can, they're wonderful people, wonderful men and women both that take care of our ceremonial grounds. And one of them, brother of the medicine chief at the grounds that I go to, went out into the world, and he carried all of that knowledge that he had grown up with, the teachings of the grounds, as they're headed. You guys come on in. I think we have more chairs somewhere. He ended up he got his degree in education, and he taught for several years in western Oklahoma, and then he was the counselor for Haskell College, which is an all-Indian school. But he always came back several times during the year to participate in his responsibilities out at the grounds. And he was a wonderful storyteller. His name was Benny Smith. And I miss him. I miss him a lot. He passed away a few years ago. But this is a story that he taught me. And I love it because it has some elements of those universal folk tales. You know what I mean? Stories all around the world. Different people have different versions of the same essential plot line. There are over 500 collected versions of Cinderella. The Great Flood. Almost everyone has a story about the Great Flood. So you may recognize some elements in this story that can be found like in the Jack Tales of the Smoky Mountains and other places, especially in the Scots-Irish population that moved here to America. You'll hear a similar story, but I love this one because it has a uniquely Cherokee value system. You see, a long time ago, in a village of people, there lived a beloved woman. One of those women honored by her people for her wisdom, her power, her graciousness. She had lost her husband in a war, and she had snatched up his gun when he had fallen and called the warriors to follow her to victory. And they did. So she was a beloved woman for many reasons. And she had 3 sons. And after their father's death, their uncle took over the teachings of how to hunt, how to thank the animals with the prayers when you are hunting and you take an animal to feed your family. It's important to say a prayer, to say thank you. She taught them many things. But one day, her oldest son, he came to her and he said, "This life in this village is so small. I want to do great things. Mother, I want to travel the world and see what there is to see and learn what there is to learn. And the mother looked at her son, and she knew that nothing she could say would convince him to stay. And so she said, all right, I will make for you the brown cornmeal, that traveling food that warriors and hunters take when they are out on the trail. She said, but stay one more night. There are things I would like to tell you, things you will need on your journey. Stay one more night. We will stay in the OC, the hothouse. We will talk all night. At sunrise, you can go to water with your brothers, and then you will leave. But the boy was in too big of a hurry. No, Mother, he said, make the brown cornmeal. I want to leave right now. And so his mother began preparing the brown cornmeal. And the boy asked his brothers to go to water with him one more time. So they went to the running stream, and they put water over their faces. And when they had finished, the oldest boy said, if I do not come back 1 year from today, come here to the stream and wash yourselves. If I am in danger or have been hurt, your noses will bleed. And so the two remaining brothers promised their older brother that they would do that. Now, when he set out, it was already afternoon, but he was happy to be traveling. He had that pouch of brown cornmeal with him. But he hadn't gone very far, really, when he saw an old man sitting beside the trail. As the boy came closer, the old man called, "Grandson, do you have any food? It's been many days since I have eaten, and I am hungry." The boy said, "Well, I have the brown cornmeal my mother made for my journey, but I don't know how long I will be traveling. I think I will probably need all of it for myself." And the old man said, "Go in peace." And the boy kept traveling. And as the sun was going down, he saw a fire flickering ahead. And when he followed the trail toward that fire, he saw that it burned in the yard of a beautiful house. And there was a fence with a gate. And standing at the gate was the most beautiful young woman he had ever seen. She called to him. She said, "Come, I will feed you. You can sleep here and go on in the morning." And the young man was so dazzled by her beauty, by the sound of her voice, that without giving it any thought at all, he crossed through that gate. The young woman handed him a round, smooth little pebble. She said, "Put that in your medicine sack." And so the boy put it in the bag with his other sacred belongings. They went into the house. The woman cooked for him. He slept there all night. But when he woke up, there was no young woman. There was an old woman with a fierce and ugly face, who laughed at him as he turned away from her in horror. She said, "Stay, eat with me, don't be rude." But the boy was so frightened he turned and ran through the door of that house, and just as he reached the gate, he heard a popping sound, and he fell to the ground in a deep faint. The old woman gathered him and carried him inside her house and laid him in a great wooden box. Now, 1 year from that day, the two brothers that were left went to the stream to go to water, as they do every morning at sunrise. They splashed their faces with the water, and the noses began to bleed, and they looked at the drops of blood dropping into the stream, and they said, "Our brother is in danger." So they went back and they told their mother what they had seen. The second oldest boy said, I must go. He turned to his little brother and said, "You stay here, you take care of our mother, but I must go." The mother said, "Yes, it is right that you should go and try to find your brother. But stay one more night. There are things I would teach you, things that will help you on your journey." But the second brother said, No, mother, I must go now. Make for me the brown cornmeal. Every moment we delay, it could be worse for your oldest son." And so the mother stopped talking and made the brown cornmeal and filled it with the pouch and handed it to her second son, and he followed that same path that his brother had. And he too came to that old man. The old man said, "I'm hungry. Would you have any food?" And like his older brother, the second brother said, "I have this pouch of cornmeal my mother made for me, but I am out to find my brother. He is hurt. He is in trouble. I do not know how long I will be traveling. I need it for myself." And the old man said, "Go in peace." And the second brother came to that place in the forest where he saw that fire burning bright. And when he followed that trail, he came to that house and the fence and the gate and the beautiful young woman calling to him, "I will cook for you. You can sleep here tonight and go on in the morning." And like his brother, the second son saw only the beauty of the woman, heard only the lilt in her voice. So he went into that house and he ate the food she prepared for him, and he stayed that night there. And when he woke up, there was no beautiful young woman. An angry, angry woman stood in front of him saying, "Stay, eat breakfast with me, don't be rude." But the second brother, like his older brother, was frightened. He ran from the house. He ran down the path. He reached that gate, and he heard a loud popping sound. And he fell into a deep faint. And the old woman took him and laid him in that box with his brother. Now, 1 year to the day, that youngest boy, he went to the stream to go to water. He threw the water over his head and his face, and his nose began to bleed. And he looked at the drops of water in the stream, and he knew. He went back and told his mother what he had seen, and that he would have to go and try to find both his brothers. And his mother said, yes, it's right that you should do this. But stay with me one more night. There are things I would like to teach you, things that will be helpful on your journey. And the youngest boy said, Mother, of course. If there are things you want to teach me, there are things I want to hear. And so he spent the night listening to his mother as she told him things that he would need to know on his journey. And the next morning she made the brown cornmeal for him. And he set off following the path that his brothers had followed. And like his brother, he came to the old man sitting beside the trail. Before the old man could even speak, the youngest son had sat down next to him and said, Are you hungry? I have food. I have the brown cornmeal my mother made for me. I will be glad to share it with you. And the old man said, yes, that would be good. We will share a meal, and then I will teach you some things you need to know. So the old man and the young boy, they shared that brown cornmeal together. And the old man said, as you travel on, you will come to a place with a house and a fire burning in the yard, and a young woman, and she will call to you. But be aware that she is not as she appears. Do not stay in her house. If she gives you something, throw it in the fire. I will give you something to help you, something to help you with. And he handed the boy a little eagle bone whistle. And he taught him how to puff, puff, puff the breath into that whistle. 4 short, sharp blasts of the whistle. And in the air above them, there appeared a lion, a bear, an eagle, and the great Cherokee dragon, the Ukdana. The old man blew 4 soft notes, and the creatures vanished. So he not only showed the boy how to use his whistle, he taught him the ways to know when it was right to use that power. And the boy continued on his journey. And like his brother, he came to the place where he saw that fire burning ahead, and he followed the path to the house and the fence and the gate and the young woman standing there. Come in, I will cook for you. You can sleep here tonight. And she handed him, as she had his brothers, a round, smooth pebble. She said, put this in your medicine pouch. But as the boy followed the woman into the yard, as they passed that fire, the boy tossed that pebble into the fire, and there was a loud pop. And the woman said, wait, what was that? And the boy said, I think it was from the trees. I think maybe a tree branch has cracked. And he followed the boy. She followed the boy into the house, but he would not eat her food. And when he tried to convince her to sleep there, he said that no, he must sleep under the open sky. And so he slept outside the house. He did not eat her food. So in the morning, when she appeared before him as the old angry woman, he was not frightened like his brothers were. The old man had taught him exactly what to do. He pulled out that eagle bone whistle. He drew 4 sharp blasts, and in the air appeared the lion, the bear, the eagle, the uktane, and they fell on that woman and ripped her to pieces. And the boy called, "It is enough!" And they vanished. Now, the woman, even though she was ripped apart, she could still talk. And she told the boy, "You have defeated me. Your brothers are in that box in the house." And she fell silent. So the boy went in, he opened that box, and his brothers stepped forward from their long sleep. And he told them what had happened. He said, "Go home. Mother has missed you both so much. I want to travel. I want to see what is to see and learn what there is to learn. You go home. Take care of our mother and listen to her." And the 2 brothers agreed, and they returned home, and the boy journeyed on. And they say that if you were to tell each of his adventures and how many people he helped, the story would go on and on and on. But finally, he came to a village of people. And they had a woman leader, but when he walked into the village, he found all the people there in an uproar, crowded around their beloved woman. And when he asked what was wrong, the people said, "There is a giant. There is a giant coming this way. We have heard of him from the people that he has passed. He is jealous of the love we have for our beloved woman, and he is on his way to kill her." And the boy said, "Take me to her. I think I can help." But the people laughed at him. He was just a boy. What could he do? And they went back to running around in circles and yelling at each other. And the boy, he went and found the beloved woman. And when he told her that he thought he could help, she listened to him. She insisted on one thing. She said, "Let us go out on the path that he is following. I want to be away from the village. I do not want his wrath with me to harm them." And so the boy went with her. And they saw in the distance a great giant. And he came closer and closer, calling to the beloved woman, calling to her, "You are mine. You are mine." And the boy pulled out his eagle bone whistle. The lion, the bear, the eagle, the uktane, they fell on that giant. They ripped him to pieces, and the boy called, "It is enough." And they vanished. Now the people were so grateful that this boy had saved their beloved woman. They wanted to throw a festival, a feast for him. And he said, let me go home and get my 2 brothers and return with them. And then it would be lovely to have a festival. So he sat down to eat with them that night, and the beloved woman sat next to him, running her fingers through his long black hair. And when he wasn't looking, she took a little sharp knife and cut a lock of his hair, and he did not even notice. And the next day he turned back towards his home, and it took many days. But his mother and his brothers were overwhelmed with joy when they saw that he had returned. He told his mother, make us 3 identical sets of clothes. And his mother did. He went to the horse herd. He selected 3 bay horses, each as alike to the others like peas in a pod. And when the clothing was made, the boy had his brothers dress in the same clothes that his mother had made for him. And they each rode 1 bay horse. So when they came back to that village, the people were bewildered. Who is the one? Who is the one who saved our beloved woman? Who is the one that we are holding this festival for? And in unison, the 3 brothers said, I am that one. And so they sat down, and a great feast was prepared, and the beloved woman sitting next to the boys, she ran her fingers through their long hair. And when she ran her fingers through the long hair of the youngest son, she leaned over and said, why will you not let us celebrate you for saving my life? And the boy said, no man's journey happens alone. If my brothers had not made their journeys, I would not have made mine. So you see, we stand on the shoulders of those who go before. I am that one. He is that one. He is that one. So remember, as you travel the path of your life, look for those who have gone before you. Look for those on whom shoulders you stand. Wado. Thank you. I love that so much because it's really true. You know, if you ever heard the stories, the Appalachian Mountain stories of Jack and his 2 brothers, Will and Tom, they're always made fun of, you know, for not being able to do the things that the little brother, the good-hearted little brother does. So it's, to me, it's uniquely Cherokee that we remember those brothers. They may not have succeeded in their journey, but their journey nevertheless led to something important. Thank you all. Here comes Miss Charlotte.
Do you see why she should be my neighbor lady?
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Really?
Kids of all ages. There's a shaker and maker craft over there. Also, last month we debuted our Trail of Tears mural by the incredible Johnny Diacon. It's so powerful. I hope you'll explore that. And we have a newsletter. If you sign up for that, you can stay in touch because it's time.
Look at all your beautiful faces.
I know. It's an honor to have you all today. Thank you all very much.
Well,